Hello, a very warm welcome to Monday's Cross Question. I'm Iain Dale. With me on the panel are, making her debut on the programme, Laila Cunningham, Reform UK member of Westminster City Council. She's only been with Reform for a matter of weeks. She defected to them from the Conservatives. Next to her, Paul Richards, former Labour candidate, including for last year's general election. He was also special advisor to ministers in the previous Labour government, including the late lamented Hazel Blears. I miss Hazel Blears.
Me too.
My little chipmunk, I used to call her.
You did indeed.
We also have Samuel Kasumu, social entrepreneur, who was a civil society advisor to Boris Johnson while he was Prime Minister, and Christina McAnea, General Secretary of the Public Services Union, UNISON, the largest trade union in the country. They are here to take your calls, 0345 6060 973, and of course do tune in to us on Global Player.
0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Cross Question with Iain Dale. This is LBC.
Well, let's go to our first caller. It's Martin in Doncaster. Hello, Martin.
Hello, Iain and panel. Yeah, and the question is would the panel like to see our Prime Ministers and major politicians hold press conferences like Donald Trump, because he's got character, he's not boring, and he's not reading from a piece of paper? Because that was box office this afternoon.
Unfortunately, I missed most of it, so I'll take your word for that. So the question is, Martin's line was a bit dodgy, so let me repeat the question. Would you like to see our Prime Minister and other major politicians hold press conferences like Donald Trump does? I think it would allow them to show their character more. Well, Paul Richards, you've got experience of advising politicians on how they should do press conferences. I can imagine Angela Rayner doing a press conference in the style of Donald Trump. I'm not sure I can imagine Keir Starmer.
No, that's fair. I think there's a bit of a culture clash here, which is that I think most British people watching that style find it quite offensive. It's kind of boorish, it's loutish, it's sort of ill-informed, and he just speaks his brains in any situation and doesn't have much mind to the kind of, you know, the insult or the hurt or the discomfort that it covers, it creates in other people. And if you saw the Prime Minister's body language, he was obviously very uncomfortable at some of the things that Trump was saying. So it might be box office, but I just don't think it's very good leadership.
So you can't see any British politicians adopting that style?
Well, I think they'd be foolish to, because it just opens up the possibility of all kinds of, you know, terrible things that might crash markets and cause wars and God knows what else. You know, the senior levels of politics, it has to be a little bit controlled and scripted, dare I say, because they're dealing with serious issues.
Samuel?
Yeah, I have a slightly different view. I think there is a lot of value in knowing where somebody is at and what they're thinking. I think most people don't like politicians today because they think that politicians don't speak their mind. They're always trying to dodge the truth. They're always trying to find a way not to establish facts. There's also nothing wrong with discomfort. You know, one person once said to me many years ago that peace is not the absence of conflict. Sometimes it's okay to see leaders have a difference of opinion played out in front of the public, because ultimately they represent the masses who might have similar views anyway. So,
but he was a guest in our country. He was a guest, and he should have behaved with a bit more humility.
You can be a guest somewhere and still say what's on your mind and tell the truth. And at least the thing I would say Keir Starmer probably values in Donald Trump to a large extent, even though he probably doesn't agree with a lot of his politics, is at least he knows what's on his mind. You can't say the same for a lot of the leaders across the world, including across the European Union.
Well, we certainly know what's on his mind, but it's in real time, and everything he thinks, it seems, just comes out of his mouth.
But I'd like to...
Hang on, Laila. Christina.
So the answer to the question for me would be, oh God, no. I don't want to see British politicians behaving like that. I think Keir Starmer has... I think people want to see a bit of passion and maybe compassion. They want to see a bit of personality. But, I mean, Donald Trump always comes across as someone with, well, a fairly limited vocabulary. You know, he's a very, very nice man, or he's a very, very bad person. You know, I don't think he projects what America is really about for lots of people. And that, you know, I know a lot of people probably look at him, if you were American, and think, is that really who's representing our country? Obviously he is. But I do think British politicians have to perhaps loosen up a little bit. But the danger you've got with Donald Trump, it's not so much that he speaks his mind, it's that you don't know, from one day to the next, he just contradicts himself all the time. He'll say something as a fact, and then 3 days later, when it's been proven that it's not, he'll say, I never said that, or that's not true.
That's Keir Starmer. That's not Trump.
That's not Keir Starmer. I mean, seriously, Trump does do this all the time.
Yeah.
You know, he'll say certain things. His press officer will come in and say, no, what the president means is, and then 2 days later she's having to backtrack and say, well, no, that's not what he said, that's not what he meant.
Laila.
I don't agree with anyone. I think it's a very kind of liberal, elite way of thinking. Oh, he doesn't speak right, he doesn't use the same words. And it's a bit condescending to the US voters to say that he doesn't represent England, the US. He won both votes. I can't remember what it's called. He won in states and counties that were never Republican, and with no offence, but it's not up to you to say that he doesn't represent America.
No,
because the
I accept
vote,
that.
which is the way people show how they feel, is what represents America. And it's very typical of Labour and the liberal lefty to say, oh, he doesn't represent America, he doesn't use big words that we learnt in Oxford or Cambridge. That is not real America.
Well,
and
I didn't go to either Oxford or Cambridge,
well,
I have to say.
Well, obviously, you value that kind of education in our... And I don't know if you've watched Nigel Farage in his press conferences. He's very frank. He never dodges a question, and he answers it fully. And again, you know...
Yeah, but
Labour
he also indulges in a bit of Trumpery sometimes, doesn't he? I mean, he did that last week when he was alleging that people were being... that counter-demonstrators were being bussed into Epping, and it turned out to be complete fiction.
I think the difference is also when he does his Trumpisms, Nigel, it's calibrated and thought through in advance. He does it on purpose, and he says these very clever things which then generate lots of social media hits and all the rest of it. But he's not just... The thing for me about Trump is it sort of sometimes it feels like he's in sort of mental decline. He just says things out loud.
What you mean, like Biden, that they hid that he was in actual mental decline?
Yeah, maybe like Biden.
Labour
yes,
went
that's
to
right.
campaign for Biden.
It might be like
someone
Biden
who was
in the
actually
sense that
senile, and they hid it from the public. They knew for ages. That's what Labour represents.
It might be like that.
Senile.
That's right. Trump, it might be in the same situation of being in cognitive decline, which is what his voice suggests.
Fully on the game. He said a few things that not insulting at all to someone who knows what they're doing. He said...
Well, he insulted Sadiq Khan.
Well, you can blame him. But he said the way to keep a good government is low taxes, low crime, low immigration, and low-cost energy. Everything, the total opposite of what Labour's doing. So no wonder he was insulted.
Trump has got the lowest ratings of any president in this particular time.
You mean Keir Starmer?
No, I mean
actually,
Trump.
his ratings are very high.
They're not.
Yeah, but so is Keir Starmer.
Keir Starmer has the worst rating.
But we're talking about Donald Trump.
No,
Donald Trump has got incredibly low ratings.
No,
he had the worst ratings.
Laila, you can't talk over everybody because people at home haven't got a clue who's speaking, and I know you've got a very different accent to Christina, but even so.
Trump, after 100 days, Trump had the worst rating of any president after 100 days. He won by a fairly small margin, but I accept what Laila's saying. He did win, and who am I to say how the American people should vote? It's one of the largest democracies in the world, and I respect their decision. But I don't think you can say that Donald Trump... I don't think he covers himself in glory when he makes these kind of speeches, because he is so contradictory, and he makes these promises about solving things in a day, and months later we're still waiting for his answer to some of the big world problems.
Illegal immigration is down to 0 in the US because of things Trump did. Under Labour, illegal immigration has doubled.
Yeah, I'm not keen on building walls and putting military in to stop people coming in. Not talking about building walls,
we're just talking about taking it seriously.
Okay, let's do a follow-up question with John in Hammersmith. Hello, John.
Hi. Getting a little heated there, but...
You can bring some calm into the conversation, John.
Well, okay. So, on the global stage now, Mr. Trump's secondary tariffs that are due to be announced if countries don't stop trading with Russia. And I'm thinking specifically about 2 recent conflicts, India, Pakistan, and Cambodia, Thailand, both of which had involvement from China.
I need your question, John.
Does the panel think that the secondary tariffs will cause conflict, and if so, where?
Now, Donald Trump has now given Putin 10 or maybe 12 days, he said, to agree a ceasefire in Ukraine, or he will impose 100% tariffs against all nations which are still trading with Russia. And that would be quite something to do. Christina?
Well, where do you go on Trump tariffs? Because the figures go up and down. I mean, he was threatening all sorts of high tariffs. Then they've come down again, thankfully. Will he actually be able to deliver that? I think it's I think it's probably unlikely, and that he'll probably change his mind again. I think it would be very damaging for the economy of probably lots of parts of the world, including the UK, if he introduces these kind of tariffs. So I think it'd be a disaster, but I'm not 100% convinced that he'll follow through on it.
Laila?
So I don't know if you remember, but when he tried to deport people to Colombia, just like we're trying to deport rape gangs back to Pakistan, when they said no, mid-flights, he said, well, you're going to have 100% tariffs. And what did Colombia do? It accepted them and issued an apology. That, for me, is leadership. He's doing what people voted for, whereas Keir Starmer is doing the total opposite. And we don't need... I don't know if you know, but China is deemed a developing country. So it has a lot more rights when it comes to trade that our countries don't. What we really need with China is regulatory parity. And that right now, that doesn't happen. So right now, if you open a company in China, you have to have a Chinese person who has a stake in it. In the US, Chinese companies open with no US stake. And that's the key. China is abolishing all the manufacturing and industrial.
This is a question about Russia.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, if you can get Russia to come to the table, do whatever it takes.
Paul?
I think Putin is playing Trump like a violin, frankly, and he's just stringing him along. And Trump thinks that everything's a land deal or a real estate deal or a transaction, and Putin's playing a very different game. And this amusing acronym has sprung up in American discourse, hasn't it? TACO, which is Trump always chickens out. So they're saying, well, he says these things, this will happen in 2 weeks' time, but he always comes down from his position and chickens out. And Putin knows that. I mean, I am intrigued by the idea of going after the oligarchs, though, because they will be ultimately the people who could bring down Putin or reverse the war aims of invasion of Ukraine and put sort of financial pressure on them, I think. But these tariffs, I think, like all the others, they'll come, they'll go, there'll be a press conference and TACO.
It's the art of the deal.
Yeah,
which he didn't write. He didn't write the art of the deal, did he? He's one of the worst business people in the face of the planet.
Says someone who's never ran a business.
Yeah, look, just on the first question, I think we can all agree that Nigel Farage is a better politician than Donald Trump, in the sense that at least it always seems as if Nigel Farage has done some research before he makes statements, whether we agree with them or not. Donald Trump sometimes just shoots from the hip. In terms of the trade deficits with smaller countries that might be doing business with Russia, I'm not sure 100% tariff is going to make that much of an impact if they're not already trading very well with the US already. But also, Russia are part of the BRICS, some of the largest, fastest growing economies in the world, including China, including India. And so, is there a likelihood that they're going to stop doing business with Russia in the next 12 days? Absolutely not. And is there a likelihood that the US is going to impose 100% tariffs on countries like India and China? Also, absolutely not. And so I think Donald Trump is still, without a shadow of a doubt, the most powerful man in the world. And it's good that sometimes he's very, very honest, but he probably needs to maybe taper at times some of the things that he says. And the main point is this: if you keep threatening to do things and you never seem to deliver in a way that is decisive, then individuals like Putin will continue to do what they're doing, which is kicking the can down.
And Trump famously thought that Spain was one of the BRICS countries, wasn't he? There is you can Google this, folks. And he said Spain, they're a BRICS country, aren't they? Do you know what BRICS are? And he obviously didn't.
It was interesting in the press conference when he was talking about the boats, and Keir Starmer said, we're doing everything possible. Is that housing them in 4-star hotels? It's doubled. What exactly is the Labour Party doing to stop the boats? Everything possible.
Laila, in the first 17 minutes of the programme, 3 times you've tried to divert the question onto something completely unrelated. It's not going to happen a 4th time, let me just tell you that. It's 17 minutes past 8.